Hey everybody, Josh, the media here, and we have a lot of interesting news coming out of Europe right now as they bring in their CBDC by October. They are doing exactly as we expected, and the Netherlands is usually the first to really push crazy World Economic Forum policies, as we saw with the attack on farmers in recent years. The Netherlands is forced to ration electricity now after people being basically in some way forced and mostly urged to buy electric vehicles and then being told that there could be idle taxes and at the same time creating 15-minute cities so it takes longer to drive places. Similarly, they are trying to now ration electricity in the Netherlands, which we're going to get into soon. This is happening as Texas in the United States is preparing to cut off power to data centers during grid emergencies, as we see the Department of Energy warn of a 100x increase in blackout risk by 2030 on same day as Trump energy security executive order. All the while, we're seeing some crazy stuff happen with food prices surging to a 2-year high amid supply crunches and obviously all these weather disasters. Simultaneously, we have, of course, the crackdown on truckers, which in some ways people will say, well, we don't want all these foreign drivers in the United States. Yeah, I can understand that. But there is a method to all the madness, my friends. And there's a reason they're doing this and they're trying to trick people. We're going to get into that and more today and what exactly is happening and how it whittles down to affecting you watching right now at home or at work or on the road. I think it's very important we understand this. Before we get into this, I urge people to check those links below and get prepared because in many ways of food rations are going to be one of the number one ways that they will be able to control you. I urge you to go to heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on your order. So I highly recommend people get on that today. Stock up for themselves, for their family, for their loved ones. Make sure that you aren't behind on this. And this is one of the best ways to ensure that going forward. We have many other links in the description. I urge people to check it out. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already on Rumble and BitChute. Now, let's get into this. So, Free West Media reports on this interesting story out of the Netherlands. Netherlands forced to ration electricity. Tens of thousands of companies and households are waiting to connect to the green electricity grid, it says. The Netherlands is being forced to ration electricity after its overloaded grid began to buckle under the pressure of sharply increased energy transmission. A forced green transition where everything must be electric in order to achieve globalist mandated climate goals has been carried out at a furious pace without giving grid operators time to develop the grid. Experts see it as an indicator of what will soon hit more countries in Europe, many of which have already begun to be seriously affected in various ways. At the same time, China is pulling out of the EU. So, very interesting news. In mid July, more than 11,900 Dutch companies were waiting in line to access the Netherlands' new green network. A large number of public institutions and buildings, such as hospitals, schools, and fire stations, are also waiting in line, despite several of them being classified as essential businesses. Notice how they use that term. Remember, they used it in 2020. And remember, the World Economic Forum has openly said that that whole period of time was a litmus test for compliance to bring in eventually climate lockdowns, climate mandates, rations, etc., 15-minute cities, which we're now seeing pushed in Canada with the climate lockdowns in Nova Scotia, which we've reported on. It says thousands of new private homes, often new builds, are also waiting to be allowed to connect to the electricity grid. In some areas of the Netherlands, there are warnings that they may have to wait until the 2030s. This is a problem for both construction companies who cannot sell the homes and buyers who are now left with a new home without electricity and therefore worthless, which they cannot move into, while at the same time being forced to pay interest on mortgages and other housing costs. Yeah, well, then they'll come in, of course, I think, with their so-called solution to the problem. They always have a solution for every problem they create in the first place, and people go around on the merry-go-round and continue just falling deeper into the normalization of this technocracy. It says the crisis has arisen solely as a consequence of the country submitting to globalists and the EU's climate directives in that order, or as Dutch politicians put it, fighting to reduce carbon emissions, which of course we could go back to like Gro Harlem Brundtland and Maurice Strong at the United Nations for Agenda 21, and of course later on Agenda 2030, who implemented the first carbon tax in Norway, and of course have been implementing these climate approaches to bring in technocracy for a long time. And of course, those of you who've watched this for a while remember us going after Justin Trudeau, calling him a scumbag back in 2017. Well, first of all, I went there to ask him about the carbon tax. The government came up to me, said I could only ask one of the 5 questions that the government wrote. I said no. Every media took it. I ask a question politely between 2 questions. I get tackled by security, and then I get winked at by Trudeau, and it pisses me off. So I call him a scumbag. I asked him, how does he justify people having to choose between heating their homes in the winter and feeding their families in rural communities due to his carbon tax? And then they double, triple, quadrupled it from there. Mark Carney said he was going to take it away. Of course, he's a globalist who was a central banker. Now he's putting it back in with a fuel environmental subsidy tax thing. And then, of course, at the same time, they have the climate lockdowns in places like Nova Scotia and are bringing in that kind of restriction hardcore right now. But nonetheless, this is coming to a place near you soon. And this is as they are telling people, like it says, the Dutch were urged to buy electric vehicles, but are now not allowed to charge them between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. This is necessary to reduce the load of the on the overloaded electricity grid during peak hours, according to Dutch grid operators stated. This is insane. I mean, this is crazy. In 2024, sales of electric cars fell sharply as few could afford them or want the small electric vehicles they could afford. The negative trend has intensified this year, and with electricity rationing, the industry believes that sales will now plummet. Absolutely. And houses not even being able to get the electricity to them for years until 2035 years from now. And I've seen the potential of nuclear energy in the Netherlands. Now, first, I want to give some context really quickly before I get into this further, because people will be asking, and a lot of people won't watch the whole video, so they'll just go by what I'm saying at the beginning. There's a lot of context to all of this. I want to point out that, well, people will rightly point out, why would the government, why would the establishment bring down the grid? They need that for the Internet of Things technocracy system. Absolutely, they do. But how do they get that system in place? They have to destroy the old one and allow it to die in some cases, or through nefarious means, do it themselves, in order to give people the so-called solution where it makes sense, where it doesn't seem out of nowhere, like, hey, we're going to replace a system that's already working. You need it to fail first for them to roll out the red carpet for the new technocratic control grid system, which of course they've had in the ranks for a long time, but they haven't released fully. And of course, in places like the United States, the grid is like 70 years outdated. So of course, when the grid is 70 years outdated, it's very easy to knock that out, especially with the weather events we've seen recently. So again, I think this is a major part of it. Then it's the same thing as when the dollar collapses, then they have a currency in the waiting already. Don't worry, my friends, don't worry. We've got you. We got the digital currency. And then they roll that out, and then you're stuck with that as a so-called solution to the problems they created in the first place. And that will leave you more controlled by that digital system. We could go across the board with that. They destroy the supply chain. They come in with food rations. Don't worry, we'll help you. They, of course, destroy the grid. They come in with a new system, like I just mentioned. Or, of course, we could say, they wipe out pharma companies. Oh, don't worry, we have one big monopoly. It's the state. It's technocratic Marxism, and it's been going on for a long time. And with the United Nations Pact for the Future, which 193 countries signed on to back in September of 2024, they signed on to basically shutting down your bank account if you say negative things about the government. They've been able to put in food rations and electricity rations into the context of your social credit score on a digital ID system. And of course, enforce net zero, which is something that if they don't do by 2029, they need to get rid of all flights, all air travel, which I reported on yesterday. And they will be able to force people essentially into 15-minute cities and ban meat and all this kind of crazy stuff. Okay, so this is stuff that is indeed happening, and they are fast pacing it. They are fast tracking it, and we need to understand that. So they replace an old system, create a new system, replace an old system, create a new system. They always do that. It's problem, reaction, solution, repeat, the Hegelian dialectic for eternity. And I believe that they're normalizing us in a lot of ways to this. I think we've seen a lot of grid failures in recent years, and they are getting worse. And of course, this is by design. So, yes, they need a grid to work their system, but they need to destroy it to cause panic, to give people the solution that they are not ready for. Because, by the way, most individuals are not individuals anymore. They become a cog in the collective system. They have become part of the machine. They're dependent on the system, on grocery stores, on the electricity that the government allocates through them, maybe through a private company, depending on where you are. And then, of course, water and of course all these different things that you need. Obviously, the internet, cyber attacks. Oh, now we need a new surveillance system on the internet, which they're putting into place in the UK as we speak. And speaking of that, I did a video not that long ago on the CBDCs being rolled out everywhere. In that, I mentioned like 192, 193 countries are rolling out CBDCs. And I'm sure you're probably in one, unless you're watching from some random country in the middle of Africa. But I'm guessing not for most people watching, maybe one or two. Now, the digital euro is set to come out by October this year. At the latest, Christine Lagarde said back at the beginning of the year. Now we are getting there, so it's any day now. And there is no escape once that system is in place. And they're doing the same thing with the Genius Act and the Stable Act in the United States through KYC. They'll claim decentralized cryptocurrency, but it's going through a bank and it's totally surveilled. It's creating the digital system. They are rolling out through Visa and MasterCard, X Money, and all these other things to create through corporations a new digital currency system and digital ID system and a fingerprint and a social credit through the social media companies like X, like Facebook, like Twitter, like Instagram, like TikTok, etc. And they will be able to roll that out utilizing everything you've ever said, everything you've ever watched, everything you ever bought with your credit cards into this umbrella for that digital system. And that is happening right now. Elon Musk is working with Visa card, I believe, and there's another major digital ID currency company working with MasterCard that's being rolled out. I think it's Sam Altman, and then Larry Fink is getting in at the World Economic Forum, who is taking over trade, the supply chain at the same time as housing. It's like a no-brainer what's happening here. But I've rambled too long because there's more to the story that I want to read into here. So Texas is preparing to cut off power to data centers during grid emergencies. Those grid emergencies are by design. And I've been reporting on this all this month. Texas is preparing to cut off power to data centers during grid emergencies, a sign of just how strained the system has become, again, by design. Meanwhile, the Department of Energy warns of 100 times increase in blackout risk by 2030 on same day as Trump energy security executive order. I reported on that back in July. It's crazy when I say back in July, it was July 8th that I reported on this first, and it's only August 28th. It seems like time is going by both fast and slow at the same time this year because there's so much news that July 8th seems like a million years ago because so much has happened since then. It's really overwhelming, and it's overwhelming me, to be honest, as someone that has to read all this stuff every single day. It's been difficult. But these things we need to know because we need to know the negatives to make positives of them and get prepared so that we aren't left behind. SHTF plan mentions global food prices surge to 2-year high amid supply crunches. We are seeing a massive increase in the pricing while we're being told, like we were under Biden. Biden was like, there's no inflation. The economy is better than ever, which was complete nonsense. Well, Trump is saying the same thing too right now, and it's just not true. We see that at the grocery store. And, the excuse I hear from a lot of people is, well, we haven't seen the wave yet from the economic effects of Trump. Well, okay, when are we going to see that wave? Because what I'm seeing is a supply chain crunch, which is worldwide, which no president can do anything about, with a $37 trillion debt, which cannot be paid when the GDP of the world is $75 trillion. It's not possible to pay this off. It is impossible, my friends. We do a lot of videos with Mark Gonzalez on this with First National, which again is in the description of our video if you want to work with him and buy gold, silver, and get out of that system. But again, I'm so sick of this idea, this back and forth paradigm. On the left, there's nothing wrong with the economy when there clearly is, and then on the right, when someone Republican gets in, oh, there's nothing wrong with the economy, and then the left is angry. It's like it's just a teeter-totter, and no one learns because no president is going to fix the actual economy. It's based down to printing currency, a lot of currency, bankrupting everyone, and forcing you to pay the interest on the debt. Usury that's enforced in the most nefarious way. And of course, yeah, Trump doing tariffs, not helping, by the way, because this is only leading to consumers paying for this stuff. I mean, it's bullshit. It's totally against what he ran on, by the way, but I'm not surprised. Some people are. So be it. Look, the supply crunch is by design. It was written into the script a long time ago. No president is going to change that. And of course, we're seeing the year of disaster has resulted in record high losses for global insurance companies. We've seen strange formations over Texas, followed by massive tragic storms that kill children. Horrible stuff. We're seeing what happened in North Carolina. We saw what happened in Florida, in New Mexico, flash flooding. We're seeing massive earthquakes. We're seeing forest fires. We're seeing all this crazy stuff. The Palisades to Canada as well, in throughout Manitoba, Canada, where I'm from. It's just, we're seeing this across the board throughout Europe. It is by design. This was written long ago because they need a problem to come in. We'll get the reaction to come in with a solution. Problem, reaction, solution, repeat, as I mentioned. And of course, order out of chaos. Here we have Marco Rubio writing, effective immediately, we are pausing all issuance of worker visas for commercial truck drivers. Now, they say that the number of foreign drivers is endangering American lives. I agree. There's a lot of issues recently in Canada as well with this, and there's protests over this. It's crazy. We saw recently an Indian truck driver doing an illegal U-turn, which killed a bunch of people, and people are protesting for him to be freed. Insane. Look, the mass migration is part of the demoralization of the public, which was by design. And now the reaction to it is going to be used to bring in further restrictions. And now when they're pulling farmers off of farms and sending them to Mexico or Chile, or in many cases, if they have a tattoo that looks sketchy, they're sending them to El Salvador in prison, which is insane. I don't care what do you think. It's not, that's not freedom based. It's not libertarian. That's let's be honest. They're taking away from farms, from jobs that no one else is doing, which is causing another hit to the supply chain by design. They've gone after truckers for a while, and now they're doing this in the United States. And I believe there's more to this than meets the eye. As I wrote on X at World Alt Media, there's a concerted effort to devastate the supply chain to force you all on rations with a digital ID. And alas, we are seeing these digital IDs and rations being enforced across the board, and calls for mRNA rations in the food supply for soldiers. I mean, this is a real thing that is indeed happening. They're going after the electricity. They're going after the water. They're going after the food. They're going after your livelihood. They are going after your money in so many different ways. They are, of course, going after farmers. They are pushing war, which leads to this. They are trying to take over the supply chain with like BlackRock right now in Panama Canal versus China, which is a blueprint for BlackRock in the first place. Though they've lost so far, this is the agenda. And BlackRock is heavily, invested in China, so it's all fake. And of course, all this leads back to you, the consumer, and of course leads back to you and your family being able to sustain itself. And then eventually you can't depend on grocery stores. You can't depend on the electricity companies. You have to depend on the state basically taking care of you and being totally dependent on the state. And that is how they will get people and under convenience. Tyranny comes under the guise of convenience, my friends, and this is where we are heading. And we need to understand this to be able to ensure that we are not caught in the center of this. And again, there are many different ways we could do that. But what think of the main things that you depend on, that if you are without, you are going to be panicking over. The obvious ones: food, the roof over your head, water, obviously. Many people will say electricity. So yeah, the grid, though, I mean, I think the grid comes slightly after food and water, though. If you have an electric pump and when it comes to water, that's a big deal. Obviously, money is probably the number one thing, because that leads to all those different things. But even with money, if there's no food on the shelves, then what are you going to do other than depend on the state to give you those rations? And what will they offer? What will you offer them in return? Because they will ask for something in return. That will be a credit score to show that you're an upstanding person that supports them and bows to them and trusts in them and will do what they tell you to do. The basis of humanity is individualism. They are trying to bankrupt humanity of its very humanity. Individualism and freedom are synonymous. They want you to be dependent on them. And freedom does not come from the state. Freedom comes from within by your actions on a day-to-day basis, by what you defend and what you do not defend, and what you protect the ways you protect yourself and the ways you do not protect yourself. So individual responsibility in a nutshell. That's why I work so hard I make like nothing off of this, I'm telling you guys. But despite that, I still promote it because I've been offered $1 million contract to tell you things that those in the manufactured propaganda machine want me to tell you, and I've said no. But I still want to get people to go out to heavensharvest.com because I want people to have solutions at their hands. I'm barely making anything off this. It's barely keeping me alive. I am bankrupt, but I want you guys out there to have something that you guys can have in the face of as a currency, essentially, against the Great Reset. So I urge people to go and check out things like heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on these orders. These are large servings. These are, you're saving money versus inflation. And people will say, oh, 5%, it's not much. It's a lot considering how expensive organic storable food usually is. You're getting way higher quality, better serving sizes and portions. So I urge people to go and check that out and stock up on it today. Also help the farmers. Check out our link for Wild Pastures, link below. And if you go through our link, you'll get 20% off for life plus $15 off your first box of 100% grass-fed and finished beef, pasture-raised pork, pasture-raised chicken, and wild-caught seafood. There's no mRNA, no GMOs, no hormones, antibiotics, steroids, feedlots, pesticides, or chemicals of any kind in this food, all again raised on regenerative family farms in 48 U.S. states, delivered to your door, temperature controlled and temperature controlled, of course, and customizable as you see fit. Choking over my own words here, but again, this helps you kill multiple birds with one stone, no pun intended, allows you to save money, save your health from what's on the shop shelves at your local grocery store, and of course, help your local farmer, which is an amazing option going forward. So I urge people, again, to go and check that link for Wild Pastures in the description of our video. We have many different things that people can go check out. Like, again, we're under attack by, of course, frequencies across the board. Go and check out Wave Watch 2.0. Our link is in the description. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get $100 off. And it helps you improve sleep, reduce stress, fight pain, boost energy with 1,100 plus frequencies on your wrist. And it also tells the time. So I urge you to go and check that out below. And of course, a big one going forward, firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. There you can, it has to be that exact link. There you could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. You could hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, or put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. Schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez and a complimentary investors package. We do many videos with Mark, which you could check out on our channel, of course, including our recent one on the new globalist Fed chair. Of course, let him know when you sign up in the comments of the forum that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, W-A-M. Let's close this off. We appreciate all you guys. Thank you for the donations. We have gogetfunding.com. We could not survive without you. So again, thank you very much to those who've helped support us in recent times. We've lost 90% of our income since January, and you guys are the only thing keeping us up and running. And without you, we would have already gone under. So there's so much in my heart that, I mean, I thank you so much for everything. I can't put it into words. You guys have made it possible for us to carry on. So anyway, we have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. On Patreon and Subscribestar, if you pledge $4.99 a month or more, you'll get exclusive content. And of course, you could also send us questions and we'll do personalized video messages for you. Same with on X at World Alt Media when you subscribe. Thank you to those who have become members. We have a lot of free members. We just need to get a few more people at $4.99 a month to keep us up and running so that we can, continue this operation. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. We have a Bitcoin address that you could scan on the screen here or donate through the address in the description of the video as well. And we have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. So we truly appreciate that. We have a Teespring store with merchandise, of course. And as always, you can find us on Telegram, band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. And on the Bad Guys TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we're banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.